Silence. The red soil of Reach crunched under Jack's boots as he walked toward the landing pad. The colony had been established 20 years ago, but the ground still felt foreign beneath his feet. Above him, the twin moons hung like watchful eyes in the amber sky. Jack pulled his jacket tighter against the morning chill and squinted at the familiar shape of his ship in the distance. The Fong wasn't pretty. Its hull was patched in a dozen places, and its paint job had long since faded to a dull gray. But it was fast, and it was his. In the frontier colonies, that was all that mattered. "Captain on deck," Tom called out with a grin as Jack climbed the ramp. Tom was Jack's oldest friend and the ship's engineer, a burly man with a wild beard and clever hands that could fix almost anything. "Save it," Jack said, but he smiled anyway. "Is everyone here?" "Mira is running final checks on the navigation system, and Doc is loading the last of the supplies." Jack nodded and made his way to the bridge. The inside of the Fong was cramped but functional, with exposed wiring and pipes running along the ceiling. It wasn't fancy, but it kept them alive in the void. Mira looked up from the control panel as he entered. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical knot, and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. "Morning, Captain. We're cleared for takeoff in 20 minutes. Any word from the outpost at Sector 7, she asked. Jack settled into the pilot's chair. Nothing new. Just the usual request to scan the asteroid belt for viable mining locations. Doc appeared at the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. He was the oldest of the crew, with gray hair and steady hands that had saved all their lives more than once. "Medical supplies are loaded, though I don't know why the Colony Council thinks we can find better medicine in a bunch of floating rocks." "Because they're desperate," Jack said simply. "The Dominion's trade restrictions are getting tighter every month." The mention of the Dominion brought a somber mood to the bridge. The alien civilization had made contact with humanity 5 years ago, and their technological superiority had been immediately apparent. Their ships moved like liquid silver through space, and their weapons could disable a human vessel without leaving a mark. But it was their attitude that rankled most. To the Dominion, humans were primitives, savages barely worth acknowledging except to restrict their movements and access to resources. "I heard they're sending another delegation to the colony tomorrow," Tom said as he joined them on the bridge. "Probably to explain how we're violating some other divine mandate we've never heard of." Jack frowned. The Dominion's ruling class, who called themselves the Speakers, claimed to commune directly with their gods. These gods supposedly guided their civilization and justified their dominance over lesser species like humans. "Let's just focus on the job," Jack said. "The colony needs resources the Dominion won't provide. We find them, we get paid, we eat for another month." The Fong lifted off smoothly despite its age. Jack guided it through the thin atmosphere of Reach and into the blackness of space. The ship's engines hummed with reassuring familiarity as they set course for the asteroid belt at the edge of the star system. "ETA to the belt is 4 hours, Mira announced. "I've plotted a course to avoid the Dominion patrol routes." "Good," Jack replied. "Last thing we need is another inspection." The last time they had encountered a Dominion patrol, the aliens had boarded the Fong and spent hours scanning every inch, looking for technology they deemed inappropriate for savage species. They'd confiscated a prototype scanner that Doc had been developing and lectured them about the proper path of technological development as ordained by their gods. The journey to the asteroid belt passed in relative quiet. Tom tinkered with the engines, Doc inventoried their supplies, and Mira kept a watchful eye on the long-range scanners. Jack used the time to review the colony's needs: metals for construction, rare minerals for medicine, and water ice for the hydroponics facilities. Approaching the belt, Mira called out eventually. Starting initial scans. The view screen filled with the chaotic dance of the asteroid belt. Chunks of rock and ice tumbled through the void in an eternal orbit around the distant sun. "I'm picking up something strange," Mira said suddenly, her fingers moving quickly across the control panel. "There's a large object in a stable orbit within the belt. It's not showing up as a natural formation." Jack leaned forward. "Dominion." She shook her head. "No identifying signatures I recognize. It's old, really old based on the radiation patterns." "Put it on screen," Jack ordered. The image shifted, zooming in on what at first appeared to be just another asteroid. But as the image cleared, they could see that it wasn't a rock at all. It was a ship, or what remained of one. Its design was unlike anything Jack had seen before, neither human nor Dominion. The hull was dark and angular, with strange protrusions that might have once been weapons or sensors. "That's not possible," Doc whispered. "That ship design, it doesn't match any known configuration." "How long has it been there?" Jack asked. Mira ran more scans. "Based on the orbital decay, thousands of years at minimum." Tom whistled low. "Before humans even left Earth, before the Dominion claimed this sector." "Are there any active systems?" Jack asked. "Minimal power readings," Mira replied. "But something still functioning in there after all this time." Jack stared at the ancient vessel floating silently among the asteroids. A decision formed in his mind, one that he knew might change everything. "Bring us alongside," he ordered. "We're going to dock." "Captain," Doc said carefully. "The colony is expecting us to return with resources." "And we will," Jack replied. "But first, I want to know what this is. The Dominion calls us savages because we lack their technology. What if this ship changes that equation?" No one argued further. They all felt it. The potential importance of their discovery. The Fong approached the derelict vessel cautiously. Up close, the alien design was even more apparent. The hull was made of a material none of them recognized, unmarred by the countless impacts it must have endured over millennia. "I found what might be a docking port," Mira said. "It's compatible with our systems, which doesn't make any sense." "Unless it was designed to be universal," Doc suggested. "A ship meant to connect with many different types of vessels." The docking procedure went surprisingly smoothly. The ancient airlock accepted their connection as if it had been waiting for them. Jack, Tom, and Doc suited up while Mira stayed aboard to monitor the Fong's systems. The airlock cycled, and they stepped into the unknown. The interior of the derelict was dark and cold, their helmet lights cutting bright swaths through the blackness. The architecture was strange, corridors that curved in unexpected ways and doorways sized for beings both larger and smaller than humans. "Look at this," Tom said, running a gloved hand over a panel covered in symbols. "Some kind of written language, but nothing like Dominion script." "The air is thin but breathable," Doc reported, checking his scanner. "And there's minimal gravity. Something still powering life support after all this time." They moved deeper into the vessel, recording everything they found. In what appeared to be the ship's bridge, they discovered a central console that still glowed with faint light. Jack approached it carefully. The surface responded to his proximity, symbols flowing across it like water. "It's welcoming us," he said in amazement. As if in response, a holographic display activated above the console. It showed a star map, but not of any configuration they recognized, points of light connected in complex patterns, with one pulsing dot that seemed to represent their current location. "This is beyond anything the colony has," Tom said. "Maybe even beyond the Dominion." Jack nodded slowly. "And it responded to us, not to the Dominion that claims this sector, but to us, the savages." In that moment, Jack made a decision that would change the course of human history on Reach. "We don't tell anyone about this, not the Colony Council, and especially not the Dominion. We study it first, understand what we've found. The speakers claim their gods give them the right to rule," Doc said quietly. "What if this ship gives us a way to challenge that claim?" Jack's hand hovered over the ancient console, feeling the power of possibility. "Then maybe it's time to show them that savages can have sharp teeth too." For 3 weeks, Jack and his crew kept the ancient ship a secret. They made regular supply runs to maintain appearances, bringing back just enough resources to avoid suspicion from the Colony Council. But every spare moment was spent aboard the derelict, which they had nicknamed Silence for the way sound seemed to die within its strange corridors. "I think I figured out part of their language," Mira said one day. She was hunched over a portable computer, cross-referencing symbols from the ship's console with patterns they had documented throughout the vessel. Jack looked over her shoulder. "Can you read any of it?" "Not exactly read," she replied. "But I'm starting to understand the logic. It's not like any human or Dominion language. It's mathematical, pure logic." Tom entered the chamber they had designated as their workspace, carrying a piece of machinery. "Found this in what I think was an engine room. The technology is incredible. It uses principles we haven't even theorized yet." Doc followed behind, his expression troubled. We need to talk about the ship's power source. It's still functioning after thousands of years, which should be impossible by any standard we understand. Jack nodded. What's keeping it running? That's just it, Doc said. The energy signature. It's similar to what the Dominion speakers use to communicate with their gods. A heavy silence fell over the group. Are you saying this ship is connected to the Dominion's religion? Jack asked finally. Not exactly, Doc replied. I'm saying this ship might help us understand what their gods really are. Mira's computer chimed, drawing their attention. I've managed to activate more of the main console, she said. Look at this. The holographic display above the console expanded, showing a complex network of light points connected by pulsing lines. At various intersections, larger nodes glowed with particular intensity. It's a communication network, Mira explained. And these bright spots, they're receiving and transmitting massive amounts of data. To where? Jack asked. That's the thing, Mira said. These coordinates match known Dominion holy sites, places where their speakers supposedly commune with their gods. Tom whistled low. You think their gods are talking through this network? I think, Doc said carefully, that their gods might be this network. Jack stared at the display, the implications slowly sinking in. An artificial intelligence network, he said finally. Ancient and advanced, guiding the Dominion civilization. Controlling it, Mira corrected. Look at these data patterns. They're not suggestions. They're directives, commands. Before they could discuss further, an alarm sounded from the Fong. They had left a connection to the ship's systems active at all times. Dominion Patrol, Tom reported after checking the alert. Heading toward the colony. Not us, but we should get back anyway. They returned to the Fong, minds reeling with their discovery. As they pulled away from silence, carefully noting its coordinates, Jack made a decision. We need to understand more before we tell anyone, he said. If the Dominion's entire society is built around these gods that aren't gods at all, exposing that could cause chaos. Or liberation, Doc countered, depending on who learns the truth. The journey back to Reach was tense. As they approached the colony, they saw 3 sleek Dominion ships in orbit. More than the usual diplomatic delegation, Mira observed. Something's happening, Tom said, monitoring colony communications. The speakers have called an emergency meeting with the council. Jack landed the Fong at their usual pad and instructed the crew to act normal. Keep our findings quiet. I'll go to the meeting and find out what's happening. The colony center was busier than usual, with worried faces hurrying through the dusty streets. Jack slipped into the back of the council chamber just as the meeting began. 3 Dominion speakers stood at the front, their tall slender forms draped in flowing metallic garments that seemed to move with a life of their own. Their smooth, pale faces bore the characteristic markings of their rank, intricate patterns that glowed with soft blue light. The divine mandate has been updated, announced the lead speaker, its voice melodious but cold. Your expansion into the Western Territories must cease immediately. The gods have declared that area sacred. The colony leader, an older woman named Anna, stood firm. Those territories contain essential water sources for our growing population. We've already begun construction on. Your construction will stop, the speaker interrupted. The will of the gods is not negotiable. Those who defy divine mandate risk losing all protection and trading privileges. Jack felt anger rising within him. The Western Territories contained the richest farmland on Reach. Without it, the colony would struggle to feed itself, becoming even more dependent on Dominion trade. Trade that came with increasingly restrictive terms. After the meeting, Jack found Anna alone in her office, her face lined with worry. This is the 3rd restriction this month, she said when she saw him. First the mining limitations, then the technology ban, now this. They're slowly choking us, Jack. Have they given any real reason? He asked, careful not to reveal what he knew. Anna shook her head. Just divine mandate. We can't argue with their gods, can we? The bitterness in her voice was clear. What if their gods aren't what they claim? Jack said cautiously. Anna gave him a sharp look. Careful, Jack. That kind of talk is dangerous. The speakers have ways of knowing when we question their authority. Of course, he replied. Just thinking aloud. He left the colony center and rejoined his crew at a quiet corner of the local tavern, where the noise would mask their conversation. It's getting worse, he told them. They're restricting access to the Western Territories now. That's where the best farmland is, Tom said. Without it, we become completely dependent on them, Mira finished. Classic control tactic, Doc observed. Doc leaned forward. While you were gone, I analyzed more of the data from Silence. The ship wasn't just built to communicate with the network. It was designed to disrupt it. Jack's eyes widened. You mean we could interfere with the messages from their gods? Potentially, Doc nodded. The ship contains technology that can intercept, decode, and even alter the signals. That would be seen as blasphemy by the Dominion, Mira warned. They'd destroy the entire colony in retaliation. Not if they don't know who's responsible, Jack countered. We need to test this. A small disruption, something that could be attributed to natural interference. They spent the next 2 days preparing. While the colony struggled to adjust to the new restrictions, Jack's crew returned to Silence with the equipment they needed. Doc and Mira worked to activate the ship's communication systems while Jack and Tom kept watch for Dominion patrols. I think we're ready, Doc announced finally. I've programmed it to create a brief disruption in the network, just 30 seconds. It should affect the nearest node, which happens to be on the Dominion ship currently in orbit around Reach. Will they be able to trace it? Jack asked. Unlikely, Mira replied. The technology is far beyond their understanding. Ironically, they worship these systems without truly comprehending them. Jack took a deep breath. Do it. Doc activated the sequence. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the holographic display showed a ripple effect spreading through the network, centering on the node representing Reach. It's working, Mira whispered. Back at the colony, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The Dominion speakers, in the middle of another meeting with the Council, suddenly clutched their heads and fell to their knees. Their facial markings flickered and went dark. The voices, one speaker cried out. The gods are silent. Panic spread through the Dominion delegation. For 30 seconds, their connection to their gods, the guiding force of their entire civilization, was gone. When it returned, the speakers were visibly shaken. A test, the lead speaker announced, trying to regain composure. The gods test our faith. But Jack and his crew, watching the aftermath from a distance, saw something else. They saw fear. They've never experienced silence before, Doc said quietly. Their entire lives, they've had those voices guiding their every move. And now they know it can be taken away, Jack added, a grim smile forming on his face. We found their weakness. What now? Tom asked. Jack looked toward the Dominion ships hovering in orbit, their sleek forms no longer seeming so intimidating. Now, he said, we learn how to cut out their gods' tongues for good. The day after their test, the colony was buzzing with rumors. The sight of Dominion speakers falling to their knees, their sacred markings dark and lifeless, had sent shock waves through both communities. Some colonists whispered of divine punishment, others of technical malfunctions. No one suspected the truth. Jack and his crew gathered in the cargo hold of the Fong, doors sealed and sensors scanning for listening devices. Paranoia was now their constant companion. They're searching for answers, Mira reported, having just returned from the colony center. The Dominion has brought in 3 more ships. They're calling it a divine investigation. Are we suspects? Tom asked nervously, tapping a wrench against his palm. Not specifically, Mira replied. But they're questioning everyone who has access to ships or long-range communication equipment. That's half the colony, Doc noted. Jack paced the small space, thinking. We need to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more likely they'll find silence. Moving quickly gets people killed, Doc cautioned. We still don't fully understand the ship's systems. One wrong move and we could permanently damage the network or ourselves. That power source isn't exactly stable, Tom added. Jack stopped pacing. What's our timeline on getting silence operational? Mira consulted her notes. The navigation system is partially restored. Life support is stable. The main propulsion system. That's trickier. Tom thinks 2 more weeks minimum. We don't have 2 weeks, Jack said firmly. The Dominion is already limiting food shipments as punishment for what they're calling spiritual interference. If we don't act soon, people will start going hungry. Tom sighed and stood up. I can try to speed things up, but I'll need help, and we'll need to move more equipment from the colony without drawing attention. I'll handle that, Jack decided. Doc, continue working on understanding the network. Mira, you help Tom with the engines. We meet at Silence tomorrow at first light. The group dispersed, each with their tasks. Jack headed to the colony markets, where he could often pick up useful information along with supplies. The central square was busier than usual, with Dominion guards posted at every corner. Their slender forms and expressionless faces stood in stark contrast to the weathered, emotional humans they watched. At his favorite equipment stall, Jack found the owner, an older man named Pete, arguing with a Dominion official. This scanner is basic mining equipment, Pete insisted. It's been approved for colony use for years. The Dominion official, a lower-ranked technician rather than a speaker, scanned the device again. New restrictions. This scanner can detect energy patterns beyond your authorized technological level. How are we supposed to find ore deposits without proper equipment? Pete demanded. Manual labor is appropriate for your species development stage, the technician replied coldly, confiscating the scanner. The divine mandate is clear. As the official moved on, Pete noticed Jack watching. Can you believe this garbage? He muttered. Yesterday they took all our atmospheric analyzers. Today it's mining equipment. Tomorrow they'll probably bend wheels for being too advanced. Jack nodded sympathetically while examining a pile of tools. I need some specialized equipment for the Fong. Having trouble with the cooling systems. Pete glanced around before leaning in. Come back after sunset. I've got some things hidden away. Good stuff. Pre-restriction. It'll cost you, though. I'll be here, Jack promised. That night, Jack returned with a bag of rare minerals they'd collected during their last official mining run. The exchange was quick and nervous, both men aware of the consequences if caught. Jack left with a bag of tools that would help Tom restore Silence's engines, tools the Dominion had recently classified as spiritually corrupting for human use. The next morning, Jack arrived at Silence to find Tom and Mira already hard at work. The ancient ship's engine room was a marvel of engineering, with systems that seemed to flow organically into one another rather than being assembled from discrete parts. We've made progress, Tom reported, his face streaked with grease. The main power couplings are responsive. We had to bypass 3 damaged sections, but the core is stable. What about propulsion? Jack asked. Mira gestured to a pulsing blue cylinder in the center of the room. That's not like any engine I've ever seen. It doesn't burn fuel. It manipulates space itself. Can we fly it? Jack pressed. Theoretically, Tom replied. But there's no guarantee we'll be able to stop once we start. Doc appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. We have another problem. I've been monitoring Dominion communications. They've tracked the source of the disruption to this general area of the asteroid belt. They're sending a search team. Jack swore under his breath. How long do we have? 2 days, maybe less, Doc answered. Then we work through the night, Jack decided. Tom, focus only on the essential systems, propulsion and the network disruptors. Mira, transfer all the data we've gathered to the Fong's computers as a backup. Doc, keep monitoring their communications and see if you can slow them down somehow. For the next 48 hours, they worked relentlessly. Sleep came in short bursts, meals were forgotten, and every moment was filled with the urgency of their task. Tom performed mechanical miracles, Mira decoded complex alien programming languages, and Doc provided crucial insights into the network they aimed to disrupt. On the morning of the 3rd day, exhausted but determined, they gathered on Silence's bridge. The engines are online, Tom reported. Not pretty, but functional. The navigation system is, well, alien, Mira admitted. But I think I understand the basics. What about the disruptor? Jack asked. Doc pointed to a modified console where they had integrated some of their own technology with the ancient systems. It's ready for a full-scale test, but Jack, we need to be clear about what this means. If we use this at full power, we won't just be interrupting the speaker's connection to their gods for a few seconds. We'll be attacking the entire network. Good, Jack said firmly. It's time the Dominion learned what it feels like to have their beliefs challenged. This goes beyond challenging beliefs, Doc cautioned. Their entire society is built around those connections. We could be causing a civilization-wide crisis. They're already causing a crisis for us, Jack replied. Every day they tighten their restrictions. Every day our people go with less food, less medicine, less freedom. All because some artificial intelligence from thousands of years ago decided we're savages unworthy of equality. No one argued with him. They had all seen the effects of Dominion rule, the slow strangulation of human potential. How do we do this without exposing ourselves? Mira asked. The moment we activate the disruptor at full power, they'll know exactly where we are. We don't hide, Jack said. We run. We activate the disruptor, then immediately jump to light speed. We head for the Dominion Central Worlds. Tom's eyes widened. You want to take the fight directly to them? That's suicide. It's the last thing they'll expect, Jack explained. They see us as cowering savages. They won't be prepared for us to attack the heart of their civilization. Even if we succeed, Doc said slowly, even if we reach their central worlds and disrupt their entire network. What then? They have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. Without guidance from their gods, those ships and soldiers will be in chaos, Jack pointed out. And chaos creates opportunity. A warning alarm blared from their sensors. Mira checked the readings and looked up with alarm. Dominion search vessels, 3 of them, approaching fast. They found us. Earlier than expected, Jack muttered. Everyone to your stations. Tom, are the engines really ready? Tom nodded, though uncertainty flashed in his eyes. As ready as they'll ever be. Mira, plot a course away from reach. I don't want the colony blamed for this. She hurried to the navigation console, fingers flying over the alien controls. Doc, prepare the disruptor. Low power at first. Let's not show our full hand immediately. As the crew rushed to comply, Jack took the pilot's position. The control interface was strange, responding more to intention than physical input, but he adapted quickly. Outside, the 3 Dominion ships grew larger on their sensors. Sleek predators closing in on prey. They're hailing us, Mira reported. Jack smiled grimly. Let them talk. They've had enough time to give orders. He looked around at his crew, friends who had become family, united in their defiance of those who called them savages. Let's show them what savages can really do, he said, and activated Silence's ancient engines. The ship responded with surprising grace, sliding away from its hiding place among the asteroids. The Dominion vessels immediately changed course to intercept. Disruptor charged, Doc announced. Jack nodded. On my mark. Now. A pulse of energy unlike anything they had ever witnessed erupted from Silence, spreading outward in a wave that distorted the very fabric of space. The effect on the pursuing Dominion ships was immediate and dramatic. They faltered, drifting off course as their systems and their speakers lost connection to the network they depended on. Full power to engines, Jack ordered. Let's go cut out some gods' tongues. Silence leapt forward, leaving the disabled Dominion ships behind as it accelerated toward the stars, carrying its human crew and their dangerous knowledge into the heart of their oppressor's domain. The journey to the Dominion home system took 5 days. 5 days during which Jack and his crew pushed Silence to its limits, learning its systems through trial and error. 5 days during which they intercepted dozens of Dominion communications, all speaking of the same thing, the spiritual attack, in the Reach system and the missing human ship. They don't understand what happened, Doc reported, listening to yet another panicked transmission. The speakers are telling their people that evil spirits have possessed savage humans. Easier than admitting their gods went silent, Mira commented from the navigation console. She had barely slept since they fled, constantly monitoring their course through unfamiliar space. Tom emerged from the engine room, wiping his hands on a rag. The power core is stabilizing. I think I'm starting to understand how it works. It draws energy directly from subspace. Can it handle another full disruption? Jack asked. Tom hesitated. Yes, but not repeatedly. Each use strains the system. We might get 3, maybe 4 big disruptions before the core fails. Jack nodded, absorbing this information. Their plan would need to be precise. No room for error. What about the Dominion fleet? He asked, turning to Mira. She pulled up a holographic display. They're scrambling ships from every sector, creating a defensive perimeter around their central worlds. They know we're coming, but they don't know exactly where or when we'll arrive or what we're capable of. Their entire defense strategy assumes we're just primitive humans in a stolen ship, Doc added. Jack studied the display, noting the concentration of ships around one particular planet, Lumina, the Dominion capital and home to their largest temple complex. According to the information they'd gathered, it was also the central hub of the AI network that posed as their gods. We need to get to Lumina, Jack decided. Not just close enough for a disruption. We need to land. The others stared at him in disbelief. Land on the Dominion capital? Tom exclaimed. That's beyond risky. That's impossible. The disruptions are temporary, Jack explained. We've seen that. The network recovers, adapts. If we want to make a lasting change, we need to access the central hub. Even if we somehow get past their fleet, the surface defenses will destroy us before we land, Mira pointed out. Jack smiled. Not if all those defenses suddenly lose their connection to the guidance systems that control them. Understanding dawned on their faces. A targeted disruption, Doc said slowly. Not a broad wave like before, but focused specifically on their defense network. Exactly, Jack confirmed. We hit their defenses first, then make our approach while they're blind. They spent the next day preparing. Tom fine-tuned the disruption array with Doc's help, modifying it to focus on specific frequencies used by the Dominion defense systems. Mira plotted multiple approach vectors, looking for the path of least resistance. Jack studied every bit of information they had on Lumina, searching for a viable landing site close to the central temple. As they approached the outer perimeter of the Dominion home system, the ship's sensors detected the first wave of defenders, sleek patrol vessels arranged in a perfect formation. They're hailing all approaching ships, Mira reported. Standard identification protocols. Ignore them, Jack ordered. Shields at maximum. Prepare the focus disruptor. The patrol vessels broke formation, moving to intercept the unidentified ship entering their space. Warning shots flashed across Silence's bow. Disruptor ready, Doc announced, his hand hovering over the activation control. Wait for my mark, Jack said, eyes fixed on the tactical display. He needed the perfect moment when the maximum number of ships would be affected. The Dominion vessels moved closer, their weapons charging for a more serious attack. Communications flooded their receivers, demands to stop, identify, surrender. Now, Jack commanded. Doc activated the disruptor. Unlike their previous use, this time the energy pulse was narrow, focused, directed specifically at the frequencies used by Dominion weapons and navigation systems. The effect was immediate. The approaching ships faltered, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos as their systems failed. Full power to engines, Jack ordered. Straight through their line. Silence shot forward, passing through the disoriented patrol fleet before they could recover. Alarms blared throughout the Dominion system as word of the breach spread. Ahead, they could see more ships moving to block their path. A second line of defense. Another disruption ready? Jack asked. Doc shook his head. The core needs time to recharge. 2 minutes minimum. Evasive maneuvers, Jack told Mira. Get us past them without a direct confrontation. Mira's hands danced across the controls, guiding Silence through a series of impossible turns and dives. The ship responded with surprising agility, as if it understood the urgency of their mission. Several Dominion vessels gave chase, but their weapons' fire fell short or was absorbed by Silence's ancient shields. Core recharged, Doc reported as they cleared the second defensive line. Save it, Jack replied. We'll need it for the planetary defenses. Lumina grew larger on their view screen. A blue-green world surrounded by orbital platforms and defense satellites. Beyond it, the system's sun cast everything in a golden light that seemed cruelly beautiful given the danger they faced. Final approach vector locked in, Mira announced. Taking us in toward the northern continent. That's where the main temple complex is located. Planetary defense is activating, Tom warned. Energy readings off the scale. They're throwing everything at us now, Doc observed. Now, Jack ordered. The disruptor fired again, its energy precisely calibrated to the frequencies used by Lumina's defense grid. The effect rippled outward, causing the orbital platforms to go dark one by one. On the surface, lights flickered across entire cities as the disruption affected ground-based systems as well. It's working, Mira said with wonder in her voice. Their entire defense network is failing. But their success was short-lived. The ship shuddered violently as a single energy beam struck their port side. Manual weapons. Tom shouted. They've got gunners using manual targeting. Another hit rocked the ship, sending sparks flying from several consoles. Shields down to 40%, Doc reported. We can't take much more of this. Jack gripped the control panel tightly. Stay on course. Push the engines to maximum. Silence plunged toward the planet's surface, trailing smoke and debris. Behind them, Dominion ships gave chase, but most were still recovering from the disruption. Only a few managed to follow them into the atmosphere. Approaching the temple complex, Mira called out. But our landing options are limited with the damage we've taken. The vast temple complex spread out below them, its crystalline spires reaching toward the sky. At its center stood the largest structure, a perfect dome that gleamed with unnatural light. According to their research, this was the housing for the central node of the network, the heart of the Dominion's false gods. Take us down right on top of the central dome, Jack ordered. Mira looked at him in shock. That's not a landing. That's a crash. Exactly, Jack replied grimly. The disruptor won't be enough. We need to physically destroy the central node. Understanding and determination replaced the shock on Mira's face. She adjusted their course, aiming silence directly at the dome. Impact in 30 seconds, she announced. Everyone secure yourselves. They strapped into crash harnesses, bracing for impact. Outside, the few functioning Dominion defenses fired desperately at the descending ship, but it was too late to stop them. Tom, divert all remaining power to the forward shields, Jack ordered. Doc, prepare for a final disruption on impact. Core ready, Doc confirmed. On impact, it'll release everything it has left. Tom finished the power adjustments and looked around at his friends. It's been an honor, he said simply. Jack nodded, his eyes fixed on the approaching dome. For Reach, he said. For all the colonies they called savage. For freedom, Mira added. The temple complex filled their view screen, the central dome growing larger by the second. Around it, speakers and other Dominion officials fled in panic, their connection to their gods already weakening from the ship's proximity. Brace for impact. Jack shouted as silence plunged toward its target. The ancient vessel struck the dome with catastrophic force, its shields flaring brilliantly as they absorbed the initial impact. The structure beneath them cracked and then collapsed, unable to withstand the tremendous energy. Doc triggered the final disruption as they crashed through, releasing a wave of energy that spread outward from the impact site. Throughout the Dominion worlds, every speaker fell silent at once as their connection to the network was severed completely. For the first time in thousands of years, the gods of the Dominion tasted silence, darkness, pain, the taste of blood. These were Jack's first sensations as consciousness returned. He blinked, trying to clear his vision in the dim emergency lighting. Around him, the Bridge of Silence lay in ruins. Sparks flew from shattered control panels. Support beams had collapsed. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Mira. Tom. Doc, he called, his voice barely above a whisper. A groan came from his right. He turned to see Mira struggling to free herself from beneath a fallen section of ceiling. With effort, Jack unstrapped from his chair and crawled to her side. Are you okay? He asked, helping move the debris. Been better, she managed. Together they searched the wreckage, finding Tom unconscious but breathing near the engine room access. Doc was in worse shape, a deep gash across his forehead, but his pulse was steady when Jack checked. We survived, Mira said in wonder, looking around at the destruction. I didn't think any of us would. Silence protected us, Jack replied. Its structure absorbed most of the impact. As if to confirm his words, they noticed the ship's hull had cracked open in several places, revealing the structure they had crashed into. Through one such opening, they could see the interior of the shattered temple dome. "We need to move," Jack decided. "The Dominion will send soldiers as soon as they recover from the disruption." "And go where?" Mira asked. "We're on their home world, thousands of light years from Reach." "First, we find out if we succeeded," Jack said. "If the central node is destroyed, we've given ourselves a fighting chance." They roused Tom, who had a broken arm but could walk, and together they carried the still unconscious Doc toward the opening in the hull. The temple interior was vast and eerily silent. Crystalline structures that once glowed with power now lay dark and broken. At the center, where silence had driven deepest, a massive apparatus was exposed, a sphere of impossible complexity, now shattered into thousands of fragments. "The central node," Tom whispered. "The heart of their God network." "And we killed it," Mira added. "Not killed," came a weak voice. Doc had regained consciousness. Freed, Jack helped him stand. "What do you mean?" "The network," Doc said, gesturing toward the shattered sphere. "I don't think it was created to control. Look at the design, the complexity. This wasn't built as a weapon or a tool of oppression." "What then?" Tom asked, confusion evident on his face. "I think it was a caretaker," Doc replied. "A guardian intelligence created to help guide developing civilizations. But somewhere along the way, the Dominion twisted its purpose. They turned guidance into dogma, assistance into control." "How can you know that?" Mira questioned. "The ship, Silence," Doc explained. "It wasn't built to destroy the network. It was built to repair it, to reset it if it ever malfunctioned. The disruption technology was a failsafe, not a weapon." As they stood among the ruins, they heard sounds of approach. Dominion soldiers, entering the temple complex. "They're coming," Tom warned, looking for escape routes. "But they won't be the same," Jack realized. "Without their gods, without the network to guide them, they'll have to think for themselves. Make their own choices. Freedom," Mira said quietly. "But also chaos." "Change," Jack corrected. "The beginning of something new." The sounds grew closer. Shouts of confusion and fear echoed through the temple halls. "We should run," Tom urged. "No," Jack said firmly. "We face them. Show them we're not savages to be controlled, but equals to be respected." "They might kill us," Mira pointed out. "They might," Jack agreed. "Or they might listen. The network is gone. Their gods are silent. For the first time in their history, they have to decide for themselves what's right." Doc looked at the fragments of the central node, then back at his friends. "There's another possibility. The network might not be completely destroyed. These systems were designed to be resilient, self-repairing. So it could come back." Tom asked. "Perhaps," Doc said. "But differently. Without the Dominion's corruption. Without the control. As it was meant to be, a guide, not a master." The first Dominion soldiers appeared at the far end of the chamber. Their movements were uncertain, their formation loose. Without the network's guidance, they were improvising, thinking independently perhaps for the first time. Jack stepped forward, unarmed, hands visible. "For all we know, we might have just freed them too." As the Dominion forces approached, Jack and his crew stood their ground, ready to face whatever came next. Behind them, in the ruins of Silence and the shattered central node, small points of light began to flicker, faint at first, then growing stronger. The network wasn't dead. It was changing, evolving, perhaps returning to its original purpose. A new chapter was beginning, not just for the human colonists of Reach, but for the entire Dominion civilization. And whatever happened next, they would face it together, not as savages and masters, but as equals under the same stars.